New Covenants, Community Connect. We have I want to invite all of you all to stop what you're doing if you can, but if not, whenever you are partaker of this particular interaction, want you to hone in, keep your mind and your heart open, let some revelation, some understanding come in. Sure to apply to your life, because the subject today is something that we all deal with. In this Black History Month, we're going to look at Blacks in government by speaking to someone who's been in government for quite a few years. As a matter of fact, I would say, as far as government goes, this fellow is pretty long in the tooth. And as I am Elder Chris Burns, this is also someone who's familiar, very familiar, to both Bishop Dwight and Pastor Bernadette Elijah. This is Pastor Melvin C. Burns II. So first of all, I'll just say hello, if you don't mind. Hello, Melvin. How are you? Hello, Pastor Melvin. How are you?
I'm fine, Elder Chris. Elder Stanley. Which one should I call you today?
You can call me whichever.
Okay.
Any of the names that are permittable are permittable.
All right. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine.
Good.
And for anybody who's noticed the same last name, Pastor Melvin is a natural brother of myself and Pastor Bernadette, brother-in-law, brother-in-law of Bishop Dwight Elijah. And so today we're going to talk about Blacks in government. That's the subject. I want to say ahead of time, if there's a few rabbit holes, that's fine. Rabbit holes are cool to and I only have a few questions written down, so I want our guest to feel free to pour out in whichever direction, even change to a different direction if that's what he believes it ought to be done at that particular time. We'll trust him in that. But Blacks in government. First of all, let's start right here. What is your government title at this very moment?
Okay, good. Let me also thank Bishop Dwight and Pastor Bernadette for inviting me to be a part of this program today. Most of my career, I've served as a city manager in local government. Currently, I serve as an interim city manager for the city of Muskegon Heights, Michigan.
All right. Well, with that, why don't we talk a little bit about how far your association with government goes? How far would you say that goes?
Wow. To be honest, going back elementary school, middle school, I always say my career started with carrying those political brochures around for local, state, federal candidates, knocking on doors, door hangers, those flyers in the windshields. So I think that's my involvement. I think from there, like a lot of people, my profession, I was involved in student council, student government, kind of piqued my interest. Went to college and studied government. But really as a career, I think I've started off probably while I was in college running some summer recreation programs, working for Civic. That's probably where it started, somewhere around 19, 20 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, now with the part about your connection to the preparation for the types of jobs that you've had or positions that you've had over the last several decades, what was the major that you went into, or did it change somewhere in there? When was that decision? Was that made before you went to college, or after you were in the water, you decided you were going to go in some other direction? How'd that come about?
This being Black History Month, I want to make a couple of points that somewhere around mid to late 70s, I saw Andrew Young speak. Chicago, might remember. And I remember distinctly when I heard him speak, I said to myself, that's how I want to present myself. He had a great influence on me, wanting to serve.
Right.
I went to college. I wanted to be an elected official. I've never been one. I wanted to, actually my goal, I didn't want to tell anybody publicly. I wanted to be the next there'd only been one Black senator since Reconstruction. That was Edward Brooke from Massachusetts.
Right.
And my goal was to be the next Black senator. After my second year of college, I had a professor talk to me about public administration rather than political science.
Mm.
And he said, I'd read a couple of your papers, and we got this new program, public administration. He said, I seem to do a good job analyzing policies. Public administration kind of took me from the political science to more of I think I call it an employable discipline, where I got into accounting, budgeting, computer programming, statistics. And so that kind of led me to, I think I want to work in government. This is during my undergraduate years.
Mm-hmm.
I was home one year, and there was a guy speaking at the high school graduation, and he mentioned city management. And I'd always kind of knew about it, but I remember hearing him speak at that moment, thinking, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to be a city manager. And that kind of tied me this idea of, I don't want to be elected. I want to serve people. And this is the way to be a professional, have a work professional, have a real job where I don't get elected, but still serve people.
Right. Okay. How exactly did Andrew Young affect you? Said he affected you. You said you wanted to present yourself. How do you see? I asked that question because even in recent years, he said some things I thought were extremely profound, but he's not right on the front page anymore of a lot of things.
He spoke clearly and deliberately. He was a minister, but he's also a public servant. Mm-hmm. He found a way to blend those two together. Because later he would serve as an elected official, but I think just the way who he was, it wasn't like, I'm a public servant here, I'm a minister here. He spoke clearly and decisively about policy, as clearly as he would about reading the scripture or his favorite Bible passage. I've heard him throughout the years, and not in a sermon kind of way, but just, this is how my life, these are how these things do tie together, and why I serve.
That's great. So, where did you go to school?
I went to undergraduate school at Oakland University, not in California, in Rochester, Michigan, where I have a BS degree in public administration. Mm-hmm. Then I also have a master's degree from The Ohio State University. So I do have dual citizenship in Michigan and Ohio.
Okay, I have a question toward the end, maybe, or in the middle somewhere about that. I want to get you relaxed first.
Okay, yeah. And more recently, I also have a master's degree in biblical studies from Cornerstone University, the Grand Rapids Theological Seminary.
Right. Great. But how much does your faith play in how you do what you do in government?
And thank you. That's a good question.
Thank you.
It's hard to answer because it's who I am.
Right.
So it's not like, how often do you use your Spanish or your French? My faith is who I am. Right. And so I remember first labor negotiations in the city in Ohio. And my thinking was, labor negotiations, you got to lie at the negotiating table. and I remember talking to the city manager, who's a good Episcopalian brother.
All right.
And, I told him, I said, well, this might be tough. He said, because, I don't know if I can lie. And he said, don't.
Right.
And it was like, you're right, I don't have to.
Yeah.
And so people think, well, you're in politics, you're going to have to lie. No, there's things you can tell people, I can't tell you, or I can't discuss that, or I can't share that. And so I don't, when I terminate people, when I've had to let people go make tough decisions, I've never done them outside of the fact that this is who I am as a believer. I do things that are unpopular, things that people don't like, right. But I was hired to do that job. And if there's some part that ever comes to conflict, I either won't do it, or I've decided that's not the job for me.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a very good nugget for what you have to do, or even other positions where someone believes that negotiating has to be slipshod.
No,
has to be hide a card. It's in actuality, some of the best negotiators that I've ever seen didn't hide anything.
Yes.
And some of the most productive things that ever happened with me, where there was negotiation, was in the same arena of things. Yeah. Have you ever come? Oh, go ahead.
I say you're exactly right. There's things you absolutely can't do, and to tell somebody up front, yes, I can, or no, I cannot. I can think about it and be honest about it. And I think that gains you respect, when you sit down with people over time, as they know you're going to be straight with them. We know what each side's there to do. You do your job, but to know you're dealing with somebody who's going to tell you things straight, and you can bank on their word. I think it makes the whole process go better.
Hmm. Yeah, this is not one of the questions I have written down, but in your observation, not necessarily specifically or not necessarily limited to the job duties of a city manager, have you seen in politics or the political structure or lack of structure, whichever type of politics or government, where people who are of faith have a challenge with certain parts when it comes to rules or laws or ways of doing things?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of specific examples. Keep in mind, I've worked in state government, county government, as well as again most of my time in local government. Um, I think sometimes what I enjoy, people come and ask me questions.
Mm.
Say, no, you get the challenge. People say, well, how can you do this as a person of God? There have been police officers, firefighters who, may have been a passing comment about certain things. But, I, you know, I can recall like a pastor who never voted for liquor licenses. Now, whether I agree with that, his feeling was, I don't vote for liquor licenses.
Mm.
And I have a different view of that, but that's just right. There are some pastors who marijuana is legal in Michigan,
Mm.
and each establishment has to have a license, so they will consistently not vote for those licenses based on their convictions as a believer.
Mm.
And so I respect that. That's still right, but I think you never lose sight of the Christian is who I am. I'm either elected or hired for this specific job.
Mm-hmm.
And you always have the choice to not be in that position. But and you should be the person you are, but you can't ever lose sight of for me being hired or anybody that's hired what job they hired you to do, and can you or can you not do that job?
In your preparation for the disciplines and the positions you've held in your college years, whether it's at Oakland or whether it was at the Ohio State University, what type of representation did you see concerning Blacks, African Americans in the fields, in those particular fields, or maybe what do you know about even on a broader scale with other colleges or across the nation from that time to now?
An undergrad, very few. Most Blacks stayed in political science.
Mm.
And honestly, the reason being because science is more your social science classes. It's a different challenge. Again, I had to take business calculus, had to take a couple semesters of accounting, economics, advanced economics. This is going back to the early 80s. So I had to take computer programming. I would never tell this anybody this publicly, but actually learned how to program in BASIC, 83 and 84. And honestly, I understand the basics of computer programming. Now it's a different world today. The basics of we had to now again, this is in the days of I graduated in 84. Remember around 82, 83, what happens? Apple Computer comes out. Personal computers explode. So I'm doing this in the days we're transferring from mainframes to personal computers. And so from there, I go to Ohio State, big school, 50,000 students. I'm in a public administration program, about 200 students, about 50 new students come in each year. I think of the year I came in around those 50 students, there was a group of 5 or 6 of us that all came in together, Black students. And we had most of our classes together. That first year was overwhelmed. And much like the early days, in the 20th century when Black people were at many colleges, we helped each other get through, especially that first year.
Right.
We studied together, call each other, go over notes, because you'd be like, do you know what they're talking about? Like, nope, I don't either. And Bishop Dwight and Pastor Bernadette may remember this. They're the ones that actually, quick little story, they're the ones that drove me to Oakland University. First turns around 7 years later, they actually drove me to Ohio State when I moved in. A little bit of history, little Melvin Burns history there. And they probably remember I was so hesitant, reluctant. It was like, I'm just going to go in here and get my time done. But there was so much I didn't know.
Mm.
We worked together, we studied together, we helped each other. Um, it was a challenge. A lot of people not like you there. The environment wasn't necessarily hostile; it was just foreign.
Ah,
You don't know necessarily who you can talk to, who you trust, and you built it over time. And Ohio State and the program were very good to me. But when you come in, you don't know.
mm,
So we kind of we relied on each other quite a bit that first year, especially.
mm, mm. Uh, do you have any insight on what the representation of that kind of field is today compared to, like, how long ago was that?
Oh gosh, I left Ohio State in '87.
Mm.
I was out of the profession from after 2006 until the last 2 years, but I don't think statistics have changed much. I'll say it this way: I don't know numbers. I can tell you this. I think I did a check a year or two ago. If you think of all the local governments that have city managers, city administrators, I'm sure that African American administrators make up less than 10%.
Mm.
I tell people this way, honestly, when you think about starting your career, and usually start as an assistant,
Right.
there are, aside from cities that don't have city managers, you start thinking there are whole states I'm not really going to waste my time applying. You know, you put a big X through North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming.
Why? No,
You,
okay,
I mean,
okay.
not any there, but if,
Right.
you're trying, if I got to spend 72 cents on a stamp, that or just like where am I, where are logical places I'm going to get hired?
Right.
Uh, that can happen, and they did, and I got hired in the city with 18,000. When I got an assistant city manager, population 18,000, less than 5% of the community was Black.
Mm.
And it was because there was a white city manager who was committed to someone getting in the profession. And so he hired me. When I left there 3 years later, they loved me there. People hated to see me go because they wanted some, you still want somebody that can do the job.
Right.
So the opportunity is created, but you still have to be able to do the job.
You mentioned political science a couple of times now, so I swing back to something on that. It just occurred to me that you were going in as a political science major, or that's what you thought. That's
Yeah.
what you thought about. And we have an older brother who did the same thing. He did it. He didn't stay in political science either. So for anybody out there who may be listening and thinking about political science, what do you know about that type of field? Where does that type of, I know that it leads into things that doesn't have anything to do with political science on an often, but
Yes.
are there fields that political science majors end up going to that's actually applied to it other than teaching other political science classes?
A lot of them go to law school.
Yeah.
And I tell people, really, you can major in English and go to law school.
True.
It'll help you if you think your career in government is still not a bad degree to have. My suggestion is always you've got to develop some hard skills. I talk to people all the time who want to get in public administration into local government, and you need to learn how to analyze policy for sure. You need to understand the history of government, how things work, but you also want some hard skills, whether that's being in budget or finance, human resources, but you want to add some hard skills to yourself. Just makes you more employable. And again, um, when you say working in government, people use these broad terms like hours go. Well, what does that mean? What does working in government mean? You got treasury departments, dog catcher. So you have all these different departments. There's assessing. So there's all these different departments that qualify that is working in government, either by you're an appointed or elected person in government. So I generally have a hard time with that broad term just because I'm like, well, what does that mean? But you could have a desire to work in government,
Yeah.
but effectively not just being a policymaker.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna expand on and narrow down different levels and parts and pieces to government in a moment. But for anyone who is listening, you still have an interest in political science. You don't have to give up, but you may want to be aware. As a matter of fact, you can still do that and go to law school. Not only that, maybe you can have a podcast. Who knows? uh, Pertaining to city government.
Yes.
At this juncture, have you seen many changes in the way that city governments handle themselves? Let's say over the last 40 years.
Yeah.
40 or more. You choose a time, but
yes. Yes. and I'd like to tell you it's good.
You can tell us the truth. We can always pray.
There's a couple of things happening. One of the reasons I like local government is most local government, you got your big cities. Most local government is in smaller cities.
Right.
It's nonpartisan. You want your trash picked up. You want the roads paved. You don't want clean water delivered to your home. Those things don't have a whole lot of, when I say partisan, Republican, Democrat, Independent pull to them. You just want good government. And so to me, that's what's attractive to local government. What you have seen over the last 40 years is that some of that partisanship's creeping into local government in areas that don't necessarily you didn't always see in the past. And then I think this is just part of how economies are. It's just a demand on the services of local government. At one extreme, you have local governments getting into a lot of social areas. And would foster things like homelessness, people not having jobs, job skills. A lot of times, other programs might have dealt with those areas. And so you see some local governments getting more into those areas. On the other end of the spectrum, you have some people that are adamant that local government shouldn't do anything. And so there's a lot more of a demand on what local governments can do. The creep in of partisanship, I think, at the local government level, just from my opinion, in areas that weren't there before, makes it a bit more of a challenge.
There's a cliche, maybe you've heard over years, all politics is local. I was in a conversation with that a few days ago about that conversation, and I realized, there's a bunch of different ways to think about it, or it's just another cliche that you can throw out the window. Have you ever thought about that cliche about what its medicines was attributed to at different times for different purposes?
Yeah, and I hear it from time to time. I mean, you think about, everybody gets up and watch the world news, or you can't avoid seeing world news. It's on your feeds, on some channel you turn to, you get world news. But if you think about it, the government that affects you most every single day is your local government. Is my neighbor building a house 10 feet tall and blocking out the sun? That's local government orders, So that's one that touches you the most. And so those are things that I feel like that impact your life the most on a daily basis. And so somebody's making decisions about who can do what in your neighborhood, on your street, where you drive to shop and take your kids to school. Somebody's making decisions about those. And the level of people that get involved and who makes those decisions. So those things that happen. Our state governments are made up of a bunch of localities. And so, voters vote for these people, but we see in almost every place, these cities have influence on what these people decide. You talk about one of those changes I do for the last 20 years, I do political analysis at election time. We used to look at state maps. Now, when we look at elections, we're looking at county and city maps to determine where states will go.
Okay.
We weren't doing that 20 years ago.
I have on one of my questions something about what that particular thing you're speaking of, especially around the election times with the radio station, different things like that. And it also covers two other questions. So I'm gonna slow you down.
Okay.
So we'll come. How about the relationship? And a lot of times people don't. Not that I have a truly in-depth understanding of this, I believe, but plenty of people don't understand the difference between what's federal, what's state, what's county, what's city. In other words, sometimes the government is the government.
Yes.
Maybe speak on a little bit of the differences, or maybe even from your place, challenges, or whether they're tough challenges or not in how they interact with one another.
Yeah. And let me say this, and I'll go right there. I like to explain to people what I do with city management. Means I'm appointed by a city council. And I tell people this: what's the requirement to be on your local city council or township board? Being 18 years old and living in that community. That's it.
That's it.
No education, no degrees, no experience. It's who people vote for.
Right.
But that's why I love this profession is you bring in a professional to manage your community.
Right.
So I said it to say this, most people don't. People come in all the time. For example, you get a tax bill and people come to City Hall and say, this is crazy. I got all these taxes on here. Then I point out to them, let me show you all the people that get your tax money. You got the county, the state, the school district, intermediate school district, the community college, the library district, the soil and water conservation district. So you got 9 or 10 people with their hands on the tax bill, but we're the ones that send out the tax bill, so we get the complaints.
Now, when you said some people come in there and they're like, hey, look at this tax bill.
Yes.
Were you talking about me specifically, or are you talking about people do that all the time?
Oh. You know,
I have done that.
Most people aren't aware really of all the political jurisdictions they reside in.
Right.
You may live in a city and you might know the city boundaries. You live in a county. You live in a state. There's a federal government, but you're also in a school district. You're in an intermediate school district in Michigan. You might be in a soil conservation district. You might be in a district for a drain commission. So there are all these and these are all levels of government, which means they have some say and some influence on your life.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I think part of what I do enjoy about this is educating people. I get to go to do things like this, go to classrooms and teach students about local government and what it means. But most people don't know those boundaries. They start with your tax bill, and everybody that's got on your tax bill has got a hand it. You ought to be, if you got a concern, you ought to find out what part of your life do they affect, and say something to them if you have an issue. But yeah, we get people, and it's good to have the knowledge base. We get people that really will call about some of it, and sometimes they don't know who else to call. So I'm calling City Hall, and it feels good sometimes to say, well, we don't deal with that, but here's where to direct your anger.
The redirection, yes.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the interaction between the different governments, and you also used the word influence. And this is a thought of mine: different influence. Different parts of government depend on other governments. Sometimes that influence is simply funding and things like that. And so, from national to state to different local, county and city and school boards, there's usually requirements for that. But then you've also mentioned that sometimes you have to deal with even on the city level.
Yes.
The different issues of there being politics where there didn't used to be politics and things like that. Yeah. Has there been any newer? Doesn't even have to be newer. Just touch on that a little bit as far as the influence and how monies are dealt with from one to the other, as far as the words. Yeah, that's how I'm thinking about influence. I know there's other ways to be influential, but sometimes it ends up being the dollar funding. Will we be able to get what we need here?
Yeah. Keep in mind, we sometimes provide services to each other, or a county provides services to different cities. Easy example: the jail. The county provides a jail for most of the cities around. So we provide service to each other. And here in Michigan, in Muskegon County, we have a 911 emergency system. The county provides that. All the cities pay into that system that they manage. And so you'll have those exchanges. In exchange for that, they have a board where every city is represented on that board that manages central dispatch. So you find those kind of things where there's money, but there's also we interact and we exchange who may serve on there. States are always looking for local government people to serve on board commissions, whether it's your elected officials or your appointed officials. And so we want to hear from each other because those entities know how they influence each other. But I think what surprises a lot of people is we interact with other cities around us, the county. We interact with those people all the time, probably more than most people realize. And I think probably the lower the level employees are, the more they interact without the political influence. I want to say this about that word politics too, because it's pejorative. It's a dirty word now.
True.
And it doesn't have to be.
True.
Politics, I remember one of my favorite definitions is really, it's the study of, political science is the study of who gets what and how they do it. And so you and two of your neighbor, your neighborhood has to decide who we're all going to use to pick up trash. So we all have the same company instead of 10 trucks coming in here. You all discuss it, you come to agreement. That's politics.
Right.
It's how do we get things done. And so it's not a dirty word. It's not a dirty word it's not dirty for me to agree with you on this issue and then you agree with me on another issue. It's made that seem like that's wrong and dirty. No, that's negotiation. That's how our system of government should work. And for the last 10, 12 years, that's what we've seen it stall out. Is instead of one side saying, okay, I can live with this if you can live with this. And we get something in the middle, we get people back up in the corner says, if it's not my way, I'm not even going to play. I'm taking my ball. And so politics is not a dirty word. It's negotiations. It's give and take. It's let's find something we all can agree on. And again, even at the local level, we see some of that now. It's like, no, when is it, well, if it's not going my way, I'm not even coming to the meeting. So we don't have enough people to show up to even discuss an item. That I think that idea of politics fails the people they're supposed to represent.
Well, I should have wrote this down to get back off the rabbit hole I'm about to go down now. I think, and you're right, the word has gotten, I guess I wouldn't say it's gotten dirty. I should say it's gotten dirtier and dirtier. Because when we looked at something that was 200 years ago or about 2,000 years ago, it was dirty then. Yeah. But it has not gotten cleaner. Yeah. And it also applies, because of that, it gets applied to a lot of situations that are certainly outside of the government realm or things like that. I mean, my son is not starting on the football team, and I think it's because of politics.
Yeah.
And it could be. But it might be because he can't catch a ball, run, or jump. It might be some of that stuff too. Yeah. And so the words, it can be used for all. That particular word can be used for all types of things.
Here's a strange thought. Think about that word is kind of uniquely Western in a lot of ways. If you think about it. If we went, I remember this example. If you went to some of the countries and the idea of what gets done is like, okay, who's the smartest person? They'll make the decisions for us. Who's got the best skills? Or who's from the richest family?
Right.
The idea of us negotiating is like, well, no, they made the decision. The rest of us live with it. So if we say, okay, we're going to have a church dinner, who's available on the third Saturday? Well, the fourth Saturday works for me. Okay, we'll do it then. That's just our way of thinking.
Right.
But that's, in a sense, that's politics. That's the idea of, okay, how do we get to where we want to get?
How do we get it done?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, in the interactions that goes on between cities, I would presume, and I don't like to use that word, but that's what it would be since I don't know the answer. I would presume that where that occurs, the city managers and others involved, but the city managers might get to know each other pretty well if they're able to keep their job for long enough to know each other well, then they could get to know each other pretty well over time.
Yeah, we do here, and this happens in a lot of communities. We meet informally once a month, every other month, and just have informally have dinner, mayors and managers. Just talk. There's a separate managers luncheon every month, and just non-formal. Talk about what's going on, how things are going. We share war stories, and that's in addition to all the things that we may serve on together, different committees, things we see each other at. But do we all speak the same language? We swap stories about our staff or our city councils, those kind of things. That's why we share information that may help somebody else. There's a lot of camaraderie in the profession, a desire to see other guys succeed, and I think it's a very noble profession. I really do. A lot of high ethical standard. We have a code of conduct, and I honestly really do. Most city managers, you'll find a lot of traits consistent in how they see government, how they see serving. I really, one of the things that I really enjoy about the profession, for me as a person, I think it fits very well with ministry, being a pastor and the things I feel I'm called to.
Mhm. Well, when you say you all come together on a pretty regular basis and share war stories, is that like completely professional, or it is a lot of laughter and tears?
A lot of laughter, tears, a lot of, oh, your counsel did that? Let me tell you this story.
Oh,
There's things that never make it to the papers or yeah. But yeah, a lot of laughter, sometimes tears, you hate to see a brother fall. Yeah.
you
Uh,
fought a good fight, yes.
yeah. And I don't know if most people realize this, even though we're hired by cities, city managers are completely at will. So any where they devote the majority says they don't want you, you're done. There's no union to protect you, no action. You're totally at will. And again, in a state like Michigan, where we're very unionized, a lot of employee rules. The day they vote, or as we say, on any given Monday, now you kind of have a sense of when that's coming. So that's sort of the risk of the profession, but it's also the exciting part, that they present this job and I can do it and stay employed.
Now I forgot to write this. I said I didn't write this down, so I can come back to it. I didn't write it down, so maybe it'll pop back in my head in a few minutes. But pertaining to your profession specifically, and
Yes.
other governmental positions that you may know of, what would you like to see pertaining to not just the profession, but Blacks in the profession or professions? Uh, and what do you see concerning that, or what do you feel about that?
Um, Even back when I was in graduate school, I've tried to recruit people to come to public administration school. I think this is a good profession. I'd love to see more Black people know about it. A lot of people really, you think a lot of people still don't know about this profession.
Hmm.
Again, we know about elected officials, those kind of things, but one, you just build a tremendous wealth of skills and knowledge. You make a decent living, in terms of working in government, and man, you get to have a tremendous impact on people's lives. If you're into this idea of public service, it's a tremendous place and area to serve. And some people come to this profession while they go into other areas, but man, you will have just a broad wealth of knowledge. You will come in contact with so many professions. Even when I got into this, I had no idea of the broad range of things I would learn, things I've been involved in. I work with all types of engineers. I've had opportunity to be over cemeteries, over general aviation airports, travel, just things I really didn't realize I would necessarily be doing in this profession. That I've really been blessed to do, experiences I've been able to have that I don't know if I'd otherwise have had. So again, I've had a chance to learn about theater and buildings, and sometimes I can be boring to be around because I look, you look at the world differently.
Right.
I go to a city and see a water tower. Go, okay, that's probably the highest elevation in the community. Nobody else other than water treatment plant just think that. Maybe some engineers. Yes. So those are things that kind of go through your head.
Mm-hmm.
We had some parts of the city, country had unusual snow last week. And I'm thinking about, man, they don't have salt, they don't have plow trucks. Just you think that way.
Yeah.
And I spent about 15 years not in the profession, and I still think that way.
Yeah, that's that is that is extremely expansive.
Yes.
Into a lot of different areas. Now, I want to ask you. You can go out in whatever direction on this, because from a distance, some 1,000 miles away now. I know that you're on the radio sometime.
Yes.
So if you want to give a shout out to what that is, what that involves, when it is, what do you do, and what do you want to get across, those kind of things like that.
Yeah, I gosh, for about 20 years, I've been an analyst at election time on local station WUVS 103.7 The Beat. Then since COVID, last 4 years, I was on a program called Torn in Two. We recently changed the name to Community Focus. That's broadcast Facebook, streamed on Facebook and to about 4 or 5 radio stations all over the country, live.
How many?
4 or 5 radio stations all over the
Oh,
country. There's several in Michigan, a couple down in Florida.
and what's the name of it? It was torn in two, but now it's what?
It's called Community Focus
Oh, okay.
at 103.7 The Beat in Muskegon. And gosh, it's been a tremendous opportunity to educate and inform people. We have interviewed people all over the country. I hate I forget his name, but once our people be talking about somebody national, we go, yeah, we interviewed. So we've had some tremendous interviews, political candidates. Interviewed Hakeem Jeffries just before election. Didn't realize he had Cory Booker. Didn't realize he had Grand Rapids, Michigan.
He what?
He had a connection to Grand Rapids, Michigan. His family came to Grand Rapids early on. Knew all about West Michigan.
Cory Booker.
Yes. Total surprise to us. Gosh, we've interviewed governors, elected officials, we've interviewed people in entertainment, actors. So it's just been a good experience, and we're really proud of the fact we get to educate the community. We've talked about things from from health to new medications, breaking treatment areas like dementia, and so I'm really proud of that program. For me, my life's about public service. That's what it is. And you see these degrees hanging on my wall. I finally did it after I don't know how many years. I never really hung my degrees up, but I didn't have a place to put them at home. But what these mean to me, and people may think they mean things, that means that one, I was blessed by God to be able to get this education. And it's only been for one reason, to serve. And so whether I'm serving at City Hall, when I'm on the radio, I'm trying to find ways to serve the community. Try to help people, educate people, inform people. That's not only is that my life in public service, and I believe that's my life as a believer. And so it's another opportunity to do that. And I'm grateful to Paul Billings, the general manager of the station, for asking me to do it and trusting us to do that program every week.
How often is Community Focus on?
It's every Friday at 2 p.m. live. And then it's on Facebook. It's repeated, so you can go to our page and see it anytime.
Go to which page?
Go to 103.7.
103.7.
Or just Community Focus.
Or Community Focus. Okay.
Yeah, I'll host that with Gregory Roberts.
Great. I was at I was at the Final Four basketball college last year.
Yeah.
Connected with someone that we grew up with, and we had a great dinner, and we talked about different things. He began to talk about this, and when he was on there and what he expressed, and it was I was really touched by that. So when you mentioned public service, when we're talking about government, different levels, different positions, but public service.
Yes.
As you mentioned, for you, it's public service. And then with a format like this, where it is based in a community.
Yes.
But the reach, because of how things can be done now, is far beyond that community. Have you seen many communities are dealing with, suffering from, or being presented with the same type of opportunities from shore to shore in certain ways?
I'm not sure I understand that.
Oh, well, this is a smaller community, Muskegon Heights. When you have a radio station that goes out to different places in different places, or in communication with other city managers, do you find a lot of similarities in what different communities deal with, as well as the possibilities for the same type of opportunities from place to place? Yeah,
we're always faced with this challenge of getting information to people. You can have a web page, but nobody goes to it. You can send out a mailing, nobody reads it. You send out a council agenda, nobody reads it. So we're always challenged this idea of letting people know. We're putting in lead service lines for free to people's homes. Oh. And when we found out, you send a letter from City Hall, people don't even open it.
They think it's a bill.
You call, they see the caller ID City Hall, they don't answer the phone. And we said, no, but totally free to you. So we're all faced with that challenge, and probably again now more so than ever. I think the mindset of people is, if it's coming from City Hall, it's not good. If it's coming from government, it's good. So people,
it's the government.
they literally won't answer a mail. They won't return
Mm.
it if they see that on caller ID. So we actually had to have the company that's doing the work call people.
Right. Yeah. Again, I have to ask: are you talking about me specifically, or you mean in general? People do.
Yeah. Well, but again, this is a community I was raised in. But you figure, you people relocate all the time now, not like more than ever before, and move to different communities, and you live there. But here, you grow up, you know people, or their families are elected officials or serve in City Hall. When you relocate to a new community, you know, unless it directly affects you, you'd be there for years. You don't know who's on city council. You don't know anything about the decisions they're making till something affects you. And we do want to hear from citizens, you know, most of the time. No, but you do. You do. I mean, you don't want to work in this vacuum where you don't know what people think. You don't know what people want. That's the worst way to serve.
Mm.
So you want feedback. You want to hear from people. You want to know what people think. You certainly want to hear that you're doing good, but you want to hear when you're doing bad. You could think you have the best idea in the world. We're going to run with this program. We're going to run with this service, and nobody wants it. And so, guys, send up no email, call, tell somebody. But we really this government works better when people say something,
Right.
good or bad, but we get that input.
Right. Well, I have a question. What do you consider? Be as expansive or as narrow or as laser focused on a particular part as you want to be about that? What do you consider either good government or good governance?
I think good governance is people who serve doing the best with what they have to provide for the people that they serve, and never losing sight of that. I think if you are unhappy, there are some elected officials people are unhappy with, and I know this. You get who you got is who you deserve to get. If you didn't participate, you deserve to have that person if you don't like them.
Right.
And I don't mean that to say harshly, but we know in national elections, less than 50% of people vote. That number is much lower in local elections, where 10, 15, 20% of the people vote. But everybody's got an opinion.
Right.
And people aren't happy. I feel very strongly if you don't participate, you got a right to complain, but you really have surrendered your influence. So 80% of people have surrendered decision making to 20% of the people.
Yeah.
That's that's not what you want. That even if you're trying your best, you don't hear from 80% of the people.
Right.
And that doesn't lead to good governance.
I'm wondering about this now, although I don't know how you'd measure and what you'd use to measure. But I'm gonna use a term: a good community, a tight community, a tight knit community. Those are words that could actually mean something, but they may not mean anything depending on who's saying it or whether it's it's something that goes out on sale. But in a community that is really engaged with one another.
Yes.
The community itself, the kids are engaged, the adults are engaged, the elder are engaged, the people who have needs, special needs, where the community is really interactive with one another. Does that make a difference pertaining to the amount of participation in the government when it comes to voting or finding out what it is, what it really is in certain places?
Absolutely. Let me use the parallel school systems.
Mm-hmm.
Superintendent and teachers and administrators. But that school system relies on coaches and parent volunteers and PTOs and all those things. Local government isn't just us employees and elected officials.
Right.
We have all kinds of boards and commissions that require citizens, zoning boards and planning commissions and development organizations that need citizens participating. And so that's more people to have input. And so um, we get those different points of views and hey, I want to put this building in. It's right next to this playground, and a planning commission says, well, that's not an appropriate use. They're not elected officials. They're people from that community who say we don't think that's the right use for that piece of land.
Mm-hmm.
So there's places for everybody, other people to be involved. And again, that whether you call that close knit or want to know each other, but there's a role for other people to play and help make decisions about government.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I think that that helps us all. Again, that idea of making for better governance. But we certainly close knit's not necessarily a bad thing. Could be,
yeah.
But the government, it still belongs to the people. Right. Doesn't belong to me and my great ideas. Doesn't belong to those 7 or 5 elected officials. It's still, if that community decides, hey, we want to vote, we want to elect all the relatives of everybody here, that's what they, and everybody, that's what they get.
Yeah. You see them at the picnic.
Yeah.
This term public service, I was just thinking a minute ago about, earlier in our conversation, I was thinking about people who maybe got into a government position and then realized, no, I should be in a grassroots something or another, or people who were involved in things that were happening in the city or state level with something that was grassroots or something that had to do with the schools or children or something like that, and then moved into an office. Have you seen that happen with people and for yourself? I mean, as a matter of getting to where you got to, it went from political science, senator, administrator, and then world opens up to all these other different avenues of understanding. Have you seen people who've struggled with it, but thought maybe they haven't been willing to take that step outside of the thing that they're in?
Yeah, I've seen people who are community grassroots leaders finally, get on city council, and it wasn't like they thought.
Mm.
They're no longer, grassroots community organizer, motivating people. Usually they're based around a single issue, or they're just mad at City Hall. Once you're an elected official, all of a sudden you realize, oh, I've got to make some tough decisions, or you know what? We got X number of dollars, which means I got to decide where to spread it around. So you just say we don't have enough firefighters until you realize, okay, but I got to share this money with the water department and the public works department and the fire and the police department and the inspections department. But if you're just interested in fire, you say we need more firefighters or we need more police officers. Then when you have to sit there and make the decision, it's a different ballgame, and it's not for everybody. I don't want to make it sound like it's easy. It's tough. You have to make some tough decisions. I had to lay off people. The first time I laid off people, I called them office one by one and told them. I just felt like I need to do that. I said if I ever do it again, they just get a letter because I was kind of emotional. But no, I would do it. But they shouldn't find out in the newspaper or from an email. But that was tough. I mean, these are people I knew. Yeah. I've had to let people go that I've known a long time. I know their families, and I got to see them in Myers later on, see their families. Those are real experiences. So everybody can't make those decisions.
Yeah. Well, my hat's off to you. I understand it there, and my understanding is not based on understanding by doing it or wanting to do it. My understanding is that I would not want to do that. So my hat's off to you on that. And besides, if I was in that position, I would always choose firefighters. Yep. Yeah. Firefighters. Yep. What do they want? Yeah, give it to them.
Yeah, just give it. Yeah. But and so you see some people who've been involved go to kind of grassroots. I think sometimes it's tough, maybe depending on the level you're at. Like when I was in a local government, after being a city manager for 12 years, I found it kind of easy to not pay attention to council meetings. Now, I still did things in the community, but I found it like people would come to me from time to time and say, what do you think about such and such? And I don't say, I don't know, because I don't know what I went into that decision.
Mm-hmm.
For, I don't know, over a decade, I didn't go to a council meeting.
Mm.
When I went one time when they almost didn't pass a budget. And I said, hey, you need to pass a budget. But I wasn't a decision maker anymore. And so I didn't want to be the guy who, the crusty old city manager that complained about everybody else is.
It should have done it this way.
Yeah,
I told him.
Yeah, I didn't want to be that guy. And so
Right.
a guy, if I got time to tell a really quick story. There's a guy.
You got time.
That was in Minnesota a couple years ago. Remember, was a police officer. Was accused of some racial incidents, was going to get terminated. Well,
right.
The mayor went on the news and said the officer will be terminated.
Right.
The city manager
went
on the news that evening and said, well, he's entitled to due process. There has to be a review before he can be terminated.
Do we have a connection to that city manager?
He's from Muskegon Heights.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the city manager was 100%, and that was the process. You can't just, a person can do the most egregious thing in the world.
Right.
They're entitled, in many states, you're entitled to some kind of a hearing before you're terminated.
Right.
Now, the city manager didn't last 2 days on his job after that statement.
Right.
Even though he was 100% right.
Yeah.
I forgot why I'm telling that story now, but I forgot the question asked. That happens sometimes, but those are kind of things that can happen. We talk about involvement in grassroots. So you kind of say, oh, I know what I was saying. Is sometimes you don't want to make decisions on why other people are doing things. I mean, like everybody, I'll see stories and go, oh wow, that's a shame to happen, or why that happened. But sometimes you need more details before I just criticize, especially other city governments or things. I need more details, more information, because I know specifically for that what variables go in. It's like if you probably don't watch Chicago Fire, you're thinking, oh man, come on,
come on,
yeah, or guys after shift, oh, that's why, it's like,
yeah. I've never seen it, except I've only seen 15 minutes of it one time. So
yeah. It's like it's a general rule. Watching fighting fires is not that exciting and interesting. Yeah. People come from fighting a fire, they're the whole building's burning. They're like 2 feet away with a water hose. It's like, yeah, no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't even get done. You don't walk out, no sweat, nothing, Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like, I'll hear things sometimes, oh, this city did that. It's like, I don't know. Again, there's some things that go, wow, that's kind of wild, but some things you go, I don't know. I don't know what we're doing to that decision. So just certainly sometimes an article online, a newspaper are the worst sources to get information.
Woo.
Those easy. I don't know. I don't know why they decided that. But again, I think what a lot of managers, when they get out of the profession, they still have this idea of serving. Some will serve on board commissions. I hear of 1 or 2 that become elected officials. I think do that.
Wow.
But if God says do something different, I would.
You have any insights, numbers on pertaining across the nation, Blacks in government? I would assume that some type of census out there has all the numbers on what that looks like. Maybe have a bird's eye view where there seems to be. I'm gonna put it like this. As far as Black people go, I know we had a whole lot more land 100 years ago than we do now.
Yeah.
In the era of participation, and there was a lot of things that happened, say in the 40s, and then there was things that happened in the 60s, and we say, okay, how's that stacking up now? Oh, surprisingly, there's less, or surprisingly, there's way more. As far as participation in government, different levels of government, or even in the voting process, how have we been doing lately or in recent decades?
And participation in government, from a voting aspect, abysmal. From participation, probably not a whole lot different than national trends. So there's an interesting thing. This probably hasn't changed, and again, I'm not as current on some of these statistics. So there was Blacks that tend to vote and participate in government also tend to be involved in everything else. You're involved in your kid's school. You're involved in the community. And so the people who participate, there's a high level of participation. The people that don't, which is a lot, tend to not do anything. And there's a big separation. Probably the one area where I think we really have to do better. We'll support a candidate, but we don't put our dollars behind candidates. And county, state, federal level, it takes dollars.